Alright, so the motor is rewired with non-messed up cables. The base has a nice coat of blue. The table has a nice coat of blue. I still have to take the paper and tape and stuff off, but it should be good. The post is now cleaned up and has paste wax on. Looks nice and shiny. All of these pieces came out nice and blue, so that should be good. The headstock is in progress. I got a coat of primer on it. I tried to tape up the actual bearing surfaces, and because there was actually rust down inside that, I actually used a Vaporust, similar to what I did on some of the smaller parts, that worked out really great. I bought 2 gallons initially and then realized that that was not enough in the bucket I had to do the headstock, so I had to buy 2 more gallons and ended up using like 3.5 gallons. But it worked, and since it's cast iron, only do like an hour or 2, because otherwise it starts to eat the cast iron, as I found online. Luckily I didn't have that problem, but it found it online. And then for the manual rust removal, I used a combination of this nice old drill, because it had a handle, and then those wire brushes, and my 4-inch grinder with that kind of a brush. But yeah, I don't remember if I put it in the last video, but I managed to get this off, and because it's stiff in one of the spots, like it goes fine to there, and then it gets hard to turn, so it needs clean inside, but I don't have a press and stuff to fix that, so I just ordered a new one. And I don't know if it'll show, but there are some scoring lines and stuff on here. Hopefully that'll be alright. Yeah, now it's going to be, those bearings are all ready to go. I painted that. That's the bearing that sits under the table. I got, this was all rusted up, and the Vaporust took care of that. This was all rusted up, and Vaporust took care of that. And then I have the replacement. This is the part that comes out for the handle, and I have a replacement handle set that I showed, pretty sure, on the last video for that. But yeah, I think this is going to work really cool. So it's almost up to the point where once I finish this, then it's putting it back together and seeing how it goes. All the major painting is done. So the base came out cool. The table came out nice and shiny. So it's the machined edge and then the machined center. Everything else is blue top and bottom. That's the very top piece of sheet metal. That's the bottom piece. I redid the badge. This was just aluminum that had come off the front, and I printed off a sticker on paper, and then similar to what I've been doing with some of my wood projects, I just soaked it in thin super glue, and it's on there. I mean, obviously if you scratched it, it's going to come off, but if it was a real sticker, it would come off. So I think that's going to look pretty cool. And then this is the headstock piece, and that's all painted as much as I could inside and out, except for the actual bearing surfaces. You don't want that painted, obviously, because that'll interfere with the friction fits and other various things. Because it's 1, heavy, and 2, paint is fragile when you're painting it on cardboard on cement. I needed to have, I was okay to paint when this piece that's facing up was on the cement. I was able to prime the whole bottom or other side of it and then paint it. But then in order to do this end, I had to put it in a frame. So I had some pieces of plywood and scrap and a piece of 2 3/8 inch pipe that fit through the uplift and whatnot tube. So that worked great. And then because this motor mount moves, I just have that over to a screw, and that held it up off such that I could paint up underneath. And then this is the bearing for under the table. That looks good. This and this are both identical. One is for the underneath the table, one is to hold the headstock up. This is what holds the height gauge. That is the piece that goes up over one of these that the table rides up and down on. So yeah, all those pieces are done. So the next step is to start putting things, well, really the next step is to get the base put together so I can get the base put on and attached, and then I can start, well, start putting things together so it's not sitting all over the garage. These are the bearings that are replaced. The big thing is, now that I know those should be good, to put it back together and see if this still makes the really loud noise that it did before. If it does, I'll have to take this apart and do the bearings. So I'm not going to put the new chuck that I got. It's a JT33, goes half inch, or I should say 1/32 to 5/8 this time. It's a Shop Fox China one. But it spins the entire small to large very easily and does not get stuck like the original. There we go. So this was the original Jacobs chuck, Hartford, Connecticut, made in USA, 6A, 33, taper capacity 0 to half inch. So I'm still going to possibly try and clean this up and get it working, so if nothing else I'll have a spare. But I'm going to try this one. But before I put either of those on, I'm going to put this all back in and see if when I spin it, it still makes the grinding noise. If it does, I'm going to assume it's these old bearings, and I'll just have to take that apart and fix it. Because it spins nice and fairly quiet. So, yeah. And I got replacement for the set screws. I got a kit, the set screw kit, to try and replace, because one of those was stripped out on the motor side. So I'll be able to replace that with one of those. But yeah, we're getting there. I think this weekend I should hopefully be able to get this at least mostly put back together. I may have to wait, depending on if those bearings are bad, to get new bearings to put those back in, but I can get everything else put together because that spindle piece can be taken down by itself and I can have everything else in place pretty much. So I like it. Oh, and the one other thing, I am so glad that I have 2 box fans running in here while I was doing all this, especially the wire wheeling of the cast iron, because you can see the 2 filters that they've been running are almost black, and you can see the comparison of this is a 2-inch filter and this is a new 2-inch filter. You can see the difference, and so I am so glad that that was running the whole time, because that also means that there isn't a layer of black dust from the cast iron over everything. And yes, I was wearing a respirator, but that means that there was less dust in the air later, because I eventually did take the thing off. So yeah, I am so glad. I highly recommend 2 box fans with those filters. They work great. Alright, so now up to doing the stand, or the base for it. And again, this is the PM 1100. I ended up not being able to use the plywood I originally wanted because it turns out cut in half. That's actually slightly smaller than the base itself. So then I looked around to see what kind of other 3/4 inch plywood I have, and I had some birch plywood. I know that's strong, and that saved me a trip to the store. So this was 48 inches by 23 and 7/8, I think, wide. So 48 inches divided by 2 gives you basically 23 and 15/16 after you cut it on the table saw, and that'll give me 2 layers. And then the other problem I ran into is they use 40 millimeters, so where is it? I should have had this out before. They use metric machine screws. So that comes with M8 30 30mm and M8 40mm machine screws. The 30mm for 3/4 of an inch thick or less, and the 40 if you go up to 1 inch thick. Well, and they say you can use thicker, but you have to get your own screws. What they don't tell you is that M8 screws are not a common thing in the US, and yeah, I could get them, but I'd have to order them online most likely, and it would be a week, and I don't want to wait a week. So what I did instead, I decided, alright, I will do the 2 layers, and I will do 1 layer, which is the 3/4 inch with the 30mm screws. And then I will do a second layer, and on the back side, I'll do a second layer, and then on the back side, I will just route out a slot that's the same thickness as those plates. And then I also have holes so that I can get to the screws from the top to unscrew it if need be. And yeah, so we're going to try it that way. So far what I've gotten is I have 1 plate that's done and on. I have the other plate sort of printed. It's funny, I used the last of the second can just to do the edging on this board. So I used a full 2 cans of the blue and 1.5 of primer. So the next step is to route out the edges on the bottom of this board. That way this will sit down flat, and then most likely if I don't route that out, there'll be a gap, which sort of defeats the purpose of using the plywood. So I'll route that out, that way both pieces sit flush, and then I will most likely screw from up underneath to hold it all together solid. And those are the holes for the back of the drill press, and that's the holes for the front. So the way this ends up working, because I have wood on top, I don't have to worry about some of the metal feet being on metal, some of them being on wood. They'll all be on wood because there's little tiny raised bits on the bottom of the base. So this way they'll all be on wood, and this way I have, because of this size, I was able to basically get all of the mounting holes for the drill press base to not have to go through the metal sides. So that's the other problem with the smaller piece of plywood I was originally going to use. I would have had to drill holes in every one of these sides, or at least 2 of them rather, because this one's in the center, but those 2 would have been out in the corners, and that would have been way more annoying, because not only this top plate but the bottom plate to get the bolts up through. So this way it's just going up through wood. It should be fine. I have all the bolts I need for that. Alright, it's on the stand successfully, and thanks to my friend Mike's help, this is back on. So I got the pipe. The pipe actually went in real nice. I put a little 3-in-1 oil on there, on all the bearings, well, bearing surfaces, meaning where metal and metal is supposed to touch. That went down in nice. The bolts bolted it just fine to the base. With 2 people, this was very easy to put back on. Slid down nice. And again, I got this on. I still have to adjust that and grease it up and oil it, but the cool thing is, oops, if I don't kick stuff, this does not make a grinding noise anymore when I spin this. I mean, it makes a little bit of noise, but it's supposed to make a little bit of noise. So I think that all my problem was due to those top bearings that I replaced. So yay, I don't have to take this bottom part off. So now I just have to go back through and do all the other bits of, I need to lube up that star shaft. I need to lube up the back of this. Keep kicking the wheels. I need to lube up this. I need to adjust the spring so that this, it does. I think with lubrication it would go up just fine. The new handle works great. I did end up ordering a new light because the old light stuck clear down here and was kind of in the way of some things. So I have a new gooseneck light that I should be able to attach that'll come down. It should get here tomorrow. But yeah, I'm very happy with the fact that that does that. And this, it makes a little bit of noise, but that's just the, well, you can see the gears meshing, but that should be fine. So yeah, I'm very happy. I think it looks awesome. This cart works really good. Let's see. Just do that and that. Oops, needs a little more than one finger. But yeah, that works great. So I will keep working on it and get the top part all sorted. That is what's next. It's all done and it works. So as I showed in the last video, the wheels work nice. The spinny piece works nice. I don't remember if I have this unlatched or... yeah. So that spins real nice on that bearing. The handle goes down nice. Comes back up nice. That's the belt that I got. It was a 5-foot belt. And you can see comparison on the paint. I like the new paint much better. There we go. So that's the switch that I put in because the other switch wasn't grounded. So granted, it's not a real tool switch, but it works. I got the badge back on with the same little pins that it originally came with. There's the original badge for here. Some of the corners got a little bit dinged, but it still works. It goes down, it retracts. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So I got this. This was a vintage Williams 453 wrench. It has the 13/64 pin, but it doesn't have the right angle. So if I ever have to take the new chuck off, I'll just have to grind a little bit more away to match the angle, and then that should work great. That's assuming that this chuck has problems. It may not. Hopefully not. This was the chuck that I got as a replacement. And yeah. So now I have a total of 3 chuck keys. One that's attached to the unit, and then this one came with the new chuck, and that's the one I got at Home Depot. There's the wrench that you use to tighten this up. The motor does jump a bit when you plug it in, but it runs fairly quiet, and there's no clacking noise, no grinding noise, just spinny noise. So, yay! That's awesome. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. I think it came out really good. I think it's going to be a good addition. As I said before, this is just slightly wider than the table. So, like, the base comes out to about here. So I would have had to have enough space to put something with the table anyway, so that much more means I could make wider set of drawers for the bottom. Now granted, I have to keep in mind, at least for the bottom drawer, those flip up, so I'll have to sort that out. But yeah, that should be awesome. I'll have enough space for a set of drawers that I can probably move my drill press equipment and bits and all that kind of stuff over here under that, and that'll be great. And yeah, this is awesome. I'm very happy. The post went down in real easy. After I got it lined up, it just slid down in. I was able to clamp that on good. It all attached fine. The table slid on perfect now that there's no rust. The top part slid on perfect now that there's no rust on the post. And yeah, the only issue I had that I ran into was initially with the keyway. I didn't have that quite lined up, and there's a large gap vertically that the key could go in. I think it was up out of position, so it wasn't latched tightly. So initially the motor was making all sorts of horrible noise, and it's like, oh no, don't tell me I need to replace the bearings. So I took the top back off, took the pulley off, checked the motor. Motor was quiet there, so it's like, okay, I probably didn't have the keyway checked, made sure the keyway was in the correct position, and that was all good. So that worked. I ended up using 2 full cans of the blue. It's that cobalt blue. From Home Depot, cobalt blue metallic, and 1 full can of the primer and a partial other can of the primer. But these are the bits that I didn't put back. This used to hold on the old handle, which I didn't use. These are the 2 bearings I took out from the top. This is the old bad cord, my now backup copy for a chuck, and here's the fancy switch. It is a nice switch, but again, I couldn't figure out which way it was supposed to get grounded, if it was supposed to get grounded, so I didn't use it. I do like this kit. This is the kit I bought to get the Allen screws to put back in the pulleys, and that was the 1/4 inch. I ended up using 3 of the 1/4 inch ones. That was definitely worth getting for if you don't have a set of replacements for those, because that's much easier to just pull them out of there than suddenly need some you don't have. But yeah, I am very happy. This was a definite success and a fun project, and now I have lots of evapor rust, as you can see down there, to clean up other things that are rusty. But yeah, that's awesome, and I am very, very glad it worked out.